Hello and welcome to the Faculty Town Hall organized by the Faculty Business Senate. I'm Martin Berger, Provost, and I'm joined here by our President, Alyssa Tenney. Rachel Weiss asked me to express her regrets that she's unable to attend today. She's feeling sick and is at home, but she will be joining us online. We're also joined by Mike Nicolai, the head of HR, who's here to answer any specific questions that pertain to personnel matters that we don't have the expertise to address. I want to give you just a little bit of information on our process before we begin. I will talk briefly about our process. Alyssa will begin with some opening remarks, and then I'll try and address some of the questions that we've heard most frequently over the last couple of weeks, and then we'll open up the chat line for your questions. We would prefer if you would avoid engaging in chat between one another online. We saw when we held a department heads meeting just a couple of days ago that it became confusing for the moderators to be able to distinguish the questions from the comments. So if you can confine yourself to just asking us questions, we have staff here in the room who will then read the questions aloud, and Alyssa and I and Mike will do our best to address them. There's a large number of you online, somewhere over 200 at this stage, and we expect additional people to join. So our communication is going to be solely through chat. There won't be the option for you to verbally ask a question. Okay, and with that, since everyone seems to be agreeing, I will pass it over to Alyssa for her opening comments.
Thank you, Martin. And I just wanted to say that Martin and I are practicing social distancing here, so this is why we are as far apart as we are. So thank you to the faculty for being here virtually as it is. I hope that everyone is safe and healthy and with loved ones. I've been doing some reflecting today. We haven't had much time for reflection, as you can imagine, in the last week or so, but I wrote down a few thoughts that I would like to share with you. I want to begin by reiterating that the extraordinary measures that we have announced over the past week have been for the health and safety of everyone in the SAIC community and to do our part for slowing the spread of COVID-19. We have also been valiantly trying to preserve as much of the educational environment as possible. However, the rapidly evolving situation quickly revealed that we would not be able to give our students as much access to our campus as we had hoped. Nevertheless, we need to continue to fulfill our educational promise to our students, even in this unprecedented environment. They came to SAIC with hopes and dreams of completing their education, and everyone has a part to play in making sure that they do. Initially, the greatest weight has been carried by our exceptional staff, who have been working heroically and tirelessly to keep our students safe and to help you prepare our faculty for the rest of the semester and move operations online so that they can continue to support you and to support our students. Meanwhile, you have been preparing to change your syllabi for our new context. This means the curriculum will necessarily look different than what any of us planned. But as Adrian Wong mentioned in an earlier meeting, this is a moment for you to reinvent and reimagine as faculty, and I'm impressed by how you have dove right in already. Over 200 faculty have taken the online training already. And at the opening of the exceptional, albeit sadly shortened, undergraduate exhibition, I was speaking with Claire Ashley and Mark Jeffrey, who were already plotting their capstone students' first online experience. I also got to speak with Ayana Moore, who was very optimistic that we would rise to this very creative challenge. I couldn't agree more. I have, as I have always had, faith that the faculty at SAIC are the best art and design school faculty anywhere. Our students are lucky to have you. Even beyond the classes you will refashion for this moment, your wisdom and experience will be invaluable to them too. No matter what you teach, the rest of the semester will be, in some sense, part of how our students survive this experience and we hope flourish through adversity. This is a pivotal moment for all of our students, and perhaps most so for those who are graduating. All of them will have lived through the coronavirus as part of their college experience. But SAIC's class of 2020 will be known as the class whose rites of passage were interrupted. But our students are resilient. There is one mother who wrote to us about her daughter's experience, and I would like to take a moment to read the email. Hi, I am just a mom of one of your first-year graduate students. Thank you for your caring transparency and your compassionate direction in our world today. Thankfully, my kid has perspective about the situation. She has an apartment and is staying in. She was able to get to her studio, pick up those items she could to create art at home. Unfortunately, for the situation right now, she can't do what she loves, massive oil paintings. She told me she will get back to those one day. She has changed mediums. One last run to Blick with gloves on to grab what is safe with reduced ventilation and a resident cat. She is in touch with her professors and her art school friends via laptop and phone. Thank you for establishing a sensible, sound, and caring community that she feels connections and passion no matter what is going on in the world outside. Art will be made. Perhaps my daughter will find a new love and talent in a different medium. Your students will be creating, professing emotions that will likely be among the most profound in their lifetimes. I thank you for encouraging that now and in the weeks ahead. As always, we will learn and see such great beauty in their art. Thanks again for everything, and please take care of yourself. Deborah. So powerful. The class of 2020 will be the class that gets through this, the class that made art under all new circumstances, the class of great character. Galvanized by history, our class of 2020 will be the vanguard of imagining the world after coronavirus. Although I was not at the virtual department heads meeting earlier this week, I am told that Greg Borderwitz said, as he usually does say a great many things, somewhere about his familiarity with online learning as the director of the low-res MFA, but I also heard that he talked about our obligation to make art in times of crisis. Our students learn this responsibility from you. You are their mentors. You have lived through significant times too. Time of war, of disease, catastrophic weather, and political crisis. And the school has also endured. We are part of 150 years of history, from great fires to polar vortexes, world wars, and censorship controversies. Through it all, we have made and studied art and design. We will continue to do so. And with the help of our faculty, our students will too. Thank you again for contributing to this great and uncertain moment that we share. I know that you have many practical questions about technology, compensation, and future plans, and Martin and I, of course, will answer all that we can, and we will let you know the answers that we're still working out. We have already heard a number of questions, so Martin is going to answer some of those first, and then we will open things up to other questions. Martin.
Thank you. So one of the questions that we've heard most frequently is asking, why is it so difficult to get answers and why do announcements come out so slowly? You can see on the board behind me that we've listed an address where you can get an update on alerts and also an email address to which you can send questions. All of those questions are being cataloged and sent off to individuals who have the expertise to answer them. And we're also using the questions and the answers to update our frequently asked questions page. I'm sure many of you are aware that on the homepage of SAIC right now, there's a COVID-19 microsite that you can click at the very top of the page. And there you can find every announcement that we've sent out, as well as a wealth of information about what we're currently doing on the campus. I'd like to acknowledge that we have responded to you slower than we would like, but part of that is because this particular crisis is unlike others. It's not a fire, it's not a shooting that has a finite period of time and is over. It's something that's literally changing hour by hour. So we're constantly making changes to our plan. The other reason that updates may come a little more slowly than you'd like is because we're trying to ensure that when we make an announcement that we're able to answer your follow-up questions. So before we suggest that we're going online, or before we tell you that we're encouraging students to leave the dorms if they have the ability to do so, we want to have a concrete plan to roll out so that we don't end up upsetting people more because they don't know what's going to follow. For any of you who are following the Chronicle of Higher Ed or even the New York Times, you know that there were schools who acted faster than us, but also got themselves into trouble by not being able to deal with the consequences of their decisions. So Harvard closed its dorms with just 72 hours notice and caused chaos. There's another ACAD school that closed its dormitories while students were on March break, and all their belongings were trapped in the rooms. University of Chicago announced quickly that it was moving to online education and then had to back away from it because it didn't really have a plan. When we announced that we were moving to online, we wanted to be able to tell you at the same time precisely how CRIT staff was going to be heroically engaged in providing you with the training and support you've needed. And I've heard from many faculty who participated in the training at CRIT that they found the staff to be highly informative, that they got answers to the questions they had. And we're hopeful that our transition to online learning will be smoother because we took the time before making an announcement to actually figure out how we were going to get it done. Another question that we've received quite a few times is, why did you not act sooner to close the school and to send anyone home? As Alyssa mentioned in her opening remarks, we've tried hard throughout this crisis to balance the imperative of keeping people safe with a desire to preserve as much of our famed art and design education as was possible. So we tried to see if there was a middle ground where we could engage in social distancing, we could limit the number of people who were on campus, but still allow students to have access to their studios and shops so that they could continue as makers. When it became apparent that that wasn't possible, we then moved quickly on another course. People, I hope, can appreciate that 3 days ago, we were told that groups of 250 people could meet together, and then it quickly went to 100 to 50 to 10 now from the White House. The speed with which this crisis is developing makes it exceedingly difficult for a large organization to respond. But I assure you that we're working tirelessly to try and do the best things for the interest of our faculty and our students and our staff. We've been asked why faculty aren't more involved in the planning. Some of you may know that the state of Illinois and the federal government has mandated that colleges and universities have what's called a campus emergency operations plan. We established ours in 2008. This requirement was initiated because of a shooting at Northern Illinois University, where it became apparent that the institution had not planned for catastrophic events of that type. In 2008, we came together and developed a very comprehensive plan that essentially lays out the structure of how we deal with emergencies. It's largely been created to deal with natural disasters, with shooters on campus, with fires, and now we're confronting a different kind of threat. The Campus Master Plan has us dividing work groups into different areas that need to address particular needs for a given crisis. So right now, because we're moving quickly to online, we have 7 work groups. I'm going to read them out to you so you know what they're engaged in. One is on remote learning. One is remote working and business continuity plan. The third is instructional support spaces. The fourth is campus housing and food services. The fifth is facilities operations group. The sixth is employee considerations. And the seventh is remote events group. These groups come together and engage in planning for what needs to be done in their particular areas. They troubleshoot to try and figure out what issues we need to address. And they also make recommendations for how the campus should respond. And their recommendations are fed up to a policy group, that examines on a daily basis the recommendations that are made by each of these groups and tries to ensure that we have consistent policies, message, and procedures across the campus. Rachel Weiss, the Senate chair, has requested that we produce for her a kind of flow chart of how these groups work with a list of memberships, and we're currently engaged in putting that together. I'll share that with Rachel, and I'm sure she'll be happy to share it out with the community. The plan is essentially designed to allow us to move quickly to respond to crises, and that's exactly what it's allowed us to do. But that said, there have been a number of ways in which we've tried to engage faculty to ensure that they are part of the solutions we're building. I have a phone call with the Senate chair every second day where I give her an update on what we're currently engaged in. On the suggestion of the Faculty Business Senate, we've made additions to both the remote learning group and the instructional support spaces groups, which includes faculty members. One of the challenges of adding faculty is that these working groups meet often for 2 hours each day. So there's a considerable time commitment, which is challenging for faculty to meet at a moment when they're trying to move their classes online. We've also engaged the Faculty Business Senate to work with us to try and revise our course evaluations for the semester, because we appreciate there's a lot of anxiety among faculty about how they'll be assessed by students. And we want to assure that students are assessing their learning experience and less judging faculty members for the fact that we had to move online, which was obviously something that none of us had planned to do. Some of the other questions that we've received include what's happening with adjunct promotions and with the full-time promotions. I'm pleased to announce that all of the adjunct promotion announcements went out in the last day or two. All those faculty have been informed, and we'll be in touch with them later about multi-year contracts, which we haven't been able to get to yet, but we're happy to have announced the promotions. I'm pleased to say also that the chair of the FCTRB has notified us that she is moving forward with online meetings, and that her expectation at present is that she'll be able to complete all the promotion reviews before the end of the year. We've had many questions about how part-time people without laptops will be able to teach online. We have a cache of about 45 laptops that have been devoted to part-time faculty. The Dean's Cabinet is currently reviewing applications from part-time faculty, trying to ensure that those part-time faculty members who have no computers at all and who are teaching the most classes are given priority. And we're also making sure that our labs will remain open to part-time faculty and to full-time faculty on campus. So anyone who's interested in producing their courses at a campus facility is welcome to do so. We've been asked about the future of the Dean of Faculty search. I've asked specifically the faculty members on the search to consider how we should proceed. It's become clear that it wouldn't be safe or appropriate to have visitors come to campus at this time, so I've charged the faculty members with giving advice on whether we should move to an online visit for the 3 finalists that have been selected, or whether we should pause the search until it's safe to resume in-person interviews. And I'm hoping to be able to speak with the committee in the coming days to get their feedback. There have been many questions about whether online teaching requires faculty to maintain the same number of contact hours in an asynchronous teaching environment, and that's not at all our expectation. We fully understand that online teaching is a different animal from what you do in the classroom, and we don't expect the same teaching hours. We expect the students to be engaged the same number of hours over the course of the semester, but you need not be in front of them all that time. What's happening with Crit Week is a frequent question. At the department head meeting recently, we solicited input from the chairs about how we should proceed with Crit Week. I have trouble with that phrase for some reason. Arnold and Dwayne are also producing potential alternatives for our standard Crit Week, which they're going to share with the chairs to help generate conversation. We're trying to show as much flexibility as possible in allowing departments to come up with their own creative solutions. While it certainly would be easier to simply drop Crit Week, I think that many of us are convinced that that process for students is an important part of their development, an important part of their education, and to preserve it in some modified form is definitely our goal. Will you continue to pay TAs, GAs, and student workers? And the answer is absolutely. We'll continue to pay through the end of the semester all student employees who've been contracted. And in fact, because we are paying all employees, we're going to be paying time and a half to those student employees who continue to come to work, because we don't want to set up the difficult situation of having everyone getting paid the same amount, but some are working and some are not. So we're going to acknowledge the exceptional dedication of those who are continuing to work in campus. And we have many student employees, specifically in student life and in the residence halls, who we would classify as essential employees. They're really people that we can't get along without. Are we concerned about international students' visa status? We are concerned, but we're working with students and we're confident that we can meet all of their needs. Typically, students who are foreign nationals would not be considered in good standing if they were taking online courses, and if they were taking online courses or if they weren't enrolled in a full complement of courses. But we've received permission because of extenuating circumstances to move to an online environment and to have students have their visas preserved. Those are more or less the major questions we've received, but now we're going to turn to the chat line and open it up to the questions you're asking live.
Before we proceed with the questions, I do have one announcement. Unfortunately, YouTube Live cannot caption in real time. We will be circulating a captioned version of this town hall after the event. We do apologize for this, and we are working on a solution to have real-time captions for future campus-wide broadcasts. A special thank you goes out to Leah Gibson and Adam Gredeman for providing summaries real time. We are very grateful. All right, the first question we have, will CRIT be open for the remainder of the month?
CRIT will be open for the remainder of the month. And in addition to the previously publicized workshops that we're offering to all faculty, CRIT is also making itself available for individual consultations if people have particular problems that they need help with.
But we should say that the main part of their focus is the online training. So as we move along, we have to be responsive in terms of prioritizing their time.
There is a kind of triage that we're engaged in, and getting courses online is the #1 priority.
Students are concerned about decision making and being included in the process. How will they be included?
Well, I think, as we've already stated, we had to move so fast that the decision to move online was a critical one that we had to make very, very quickly. One example in which we have included students in decision making is in terms of the residence halls. We are now asking students to leave campus. However, we have asked them if they have exceptional circumstances, and we are being incredibly liberal with those exceptional circumstances, that we will allow them to stay in the residence halls. So this is something in which we involve them in terms of listening to what their living needs are. At the moment, there's about 100 students, we think, who will remain on campus, and we will be trying to consolidate them in one residence hall and each have single rooms. But as far as decision-making around the academic content of your courses, no, those are your decisions as the individuals who are responsible for the curriculum. As we go forward and we face summer and fall, perhaps there will be other opportunities where we will be engaging students. But at this point, we are really trying to deal with what is immediately before us.
And while we haven't had the opportunity to literally sit down with students across the table and hear their views, we're receiving hundreds of emails from students all the time, and every single one of them is read. Every one of them is considered when we're making decisions. So the student voice is very much at the forefront of our mind when we're making decisions.
I would also add that the academic advising staff is moving to being fully online and fully available. So they are completely available to students and we're receiving feedback from the advisors about what the issues are that students are concerned about.
Students are also wondering about a summer semester.
We're really working hard around the clock to address the most immediate problems. And right now, almost all of our energies are focused on getting us online. As I mentioned earlier in my remarks, there's also the challenge of events are changing so rapidly. So we would like to have a summer semester. That's absolutely our plan at this moment, but it's not something we can commit to until we see what happens in the coming weeks.
And I think you all are reading the same things that we are reading. There are some predictions that the virus will peak here in the United States in May. Well, if it peaks in May, it means that there still will be illnesses and a situation that goes through summer. This is something that we just can't predict.
What is the status of the MFA thesis and other exhibition events?
We we haven't made a final decision on that because, again, as with Crit Week, we appreciate the importance of all of those exhibitions to our students' education. But I must say that it's becoming difficult for us to imagine those shows going forward in their standard format. We have asked faculty to give us input on whether they can imagine these shows and performances taking place in an alternative format. And we'd like to hear back from them, and we'd like to follow, again, the national and the local news before making final decisions. Much as with our decision to close campus so students couldn't have access to studios and shops, we're loath to take that step unless we have no other alternative.
A clarification for Martin. Did you say that labs on campus will be open to faculty who need to prepare demonstrations and the like? This is different from what was emailed about campus being closed on March 20th. Can you clarify?
The labs will be open for faculty who are trying to produce lectures, absolutely. They won't be open to students any longer, and maybe that was the source of the confusion.
Are Crit Week panels still interdisciplinary?
That is another question that hasn't been fully determined. We also don't know the size of the Crit panels, and we don't know precisely how Crit Week will take place.
What about student food insecurity?
I'm not sure if the person is talking specifically about students in the dormitories or not, but we're working with Food for Thought to ensure that they'll continue to supply food to our students at least through the next 2 weeks. Beyond that, we don't yet have a commitment from Food for Thought, but Student Affairs is working to ensure that we continue to supply food to our students throughout the semester. So on that, I don't have any worries. I know that people are experiencing shortages in supermarkets now, but I'm consistently reading that the supply of food in the US is strong. The shortages are merely because people are buying a lot more than they typically would. We're utterly committed to ensuring that all our students get the food they need in the residence halls.
We'll also continue student affairs, I think, as most faculty know, have food cards that students can come to student affairs and get, and we would continue that. If we hear that there are more issues with food insecurity, we will step that up.
And this might be a good time for me to also add, we're doing everything we can to support our students in the dormitories. We've waived the typical lease breakage fee if they wish to leave. We're allowing a great deal of flexibility as to when they depart. We're allowing an appeals process for students who don't have another place to go, and we'll continue to support them in the dormitories and ensure that they're able to continue with their classes. We have worked hand in glove with Student Affairs to ensure that all or as many of student needs that we can address are addressed.
Is there any plan to engage with international students who cannot go back home and are staying in the residential halls? These students need special attention.
Yes, actually, this was something wonderful that we learned today, that the student affairs staff are planning online programs and activities, particularly for the students in the residence halls. And as you can imagine, most of the students who will be staying in the residence halls are international students.
And Lawrence Rodriguez and his team in International Student Affairs have been working closely with all international students to ensure that their visa status and their uh, dorm status is taken care of.
How are we supporting students stuck abroad?
My understanding is that we have been able to either bring back the students who were studying abroad and or they have gone home. I'm not aware of a situation in which there's anyone stuck, but we could also follow up on that and make sure that that's an accurate. Do you have
I,
any other further
I believe
information?
that that's correct. As
Yeah.
Alyssa said, we can check on that, but we actually started bringing our students back from study abroad programs a number of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we had a lot more time to engage in that, and we created individual plans for them to be able to continue their education when they were back here. So I think actually they were some of our luckier students in some sense because they got out of all the countries they were in, unless there were a couple of cases where students chose to remain who were international students to begin with.
Hmm.
I'm concerned about students I haven't heard back from. Who should we contact for updates?
Um, yeah, the student affairs staff. Um, I think this is where there's a little bit of a mix-up. I know that Jefferson just sent an email today about contacting students. Not that I expect students to ignore your emails, but students are expecting that this is a break and that they're not required to continue to do work during this expanded spring break. So I'm wondering if perhaps part of this is that students are feeling like they don't really need to be responding. However, if this is a student, I'm sorry, this is such an awkward setting because I don't know who you are that asked this question, but if there's a student you are particularly concerned about, please do contact the Student Affairs Office because we can reach out as well.
And we do know from conversations with student affairs is that there are some students who are on an extended break. There's some students who are struggling to get home. There are some students who are just working out of town. So there are a lot of reasons they may not be getting back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Are we closed through the rest of the semester, especially since we have already asked students to leave campus?
I think it's very likely that we are closed for the rest of the semester. Again, given our desire to have students here and engaged, if there's some way of salvaging the semester, if things were to radically turn around, we'd be delighted with that. But as Alyssa mentioned earlier, the virus is unlikely to peak until May, and then we'd have to go down the other side of the bell curve. So we're going to be facing a long time with a heightened threat.
The buildings, to be clear also, the buildings right now are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But we're hoping that students do not come to campus. Really, we will, in all likelihood, be instructing the security staff, and unless there's an urgent reason for a student to be on campus. But we understand at this point that faculty may need to come to their offices, come to the labs, come to the training, and that's fine. Right now, faculty have access to the buildings.
If everything does go back to normal, can students, undergrad and graduate students, be allowed to enter the campus and work in studios again?
Yes, but I think the question is we don't know when normal is. Absolutely. We can't wait for there to be normal so everyone can come back to campus.
Is there increased mental health support for students who stay or students we haven't yet heard from?
Joe Bean is working on a very comprehensive program of telemental health. He's had his staff engage in training, and it is our hope that we'll be able to continue to support our students after they leave campus. I know that Felice DeBlanc is also developing all sorts of student programming for students while they're away so that we can continue to foster a sense of community and belonging.
Understanding that you cannot anticipate the schedule of the contagion, will you be working on contingency plans for summer and fall so we could all have some foresight?
We are. We're continually discussing summer and fall, but at this point, there's moments in which we feel like we have a crystal ball. So we have various scenarios, and we'll continue to work on those. So we're in the midst of that kind of planning as well as this day-to-day, hour-to-hour kind of planning.
It's part of what the emergency working groups are doing for us, is to try and game out different scenarios. And as one becomes more likely than another, we spend our time and energy trying to develop a more comprehensive plan. Emergency planning is all about not being surprised. And so we're trying to develop as many possible plans as possible. But again, to return to something I've said before, things change so rapidly that our plans quickly get thrown out and we have to move on to a new one.
Are faculty able to use the labs unmonitored or unassisted?
Other than the computer labs, the rest of the facilities are not open. Correct?
I believe that that's correct. I think that faculty who have offices can get access to their
Right.
offices, but the shops certainly will remain closed. We're really trying to preserve access to the buildings for people to get to computers who need them to prepare for their classes.
And also, we don't want to have people gathering in the shops. We don't want to expose the staff who are in those shops to people coming unless it's some critical need.
What steps have been taken to protect support staff? Are there policies in place on campus for their safety, even though there are many fewer people circulating through our buildings?
Well, right now it's only what we're calling essential staff that are on campus. And of course, we are supporting them by encouraging social distancing. There's very few staff on campus at this point. Tends to be student affairs, crit. There are some in central administration, for instance, around payroll and those kinds of things. Mike, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yes, I do know that that IRFM made sure that every department had sanitation kits and that staff are instructed on clean sanitation. And while this doesn't address safety needs, I do want to mention also that any hourly staff that are essential employees and are required to be on campus, they also are being paid time and a half to acknowledge the additional support that they're providing to the school.
It's also worth mentioning for those faculty members who haven't been on campus for a while that there are very few people in our buildings now. So social distancing is not currently a problem. And to add to Mike's point, I'm proud to note that the institution made a commitment to pay our contracted employees, who you probably understand that the housekeeping and the security personnel don't actually work for SAIC. We contract with an outside vendor, but we're committed to paying them at least 3 weeks of pay if they're not able to have a job at SAIC.
Will part-time faculty have access to software they need to teach their courses off campus?
Yes, we certainly hope so. As I think Alyssa mentioned earlier, CRIT is really trying to focus people on a couple of platforms that it thinks will be most successful for transitioning to online. But if a given faculty member has a particular need, they are welcome to speak with CRIT and we'll do our best to address it. But we're hoping that Canvas will work for the majority of our faculty members.
Graduate students who signed up for courses in order to acquire skill sets like printing, will they get access to learn at a later date?
Now, this is one of those future planning items. We thought about, should there, depending on what happens in summer, should there be something that we do before the fall semester begins? I think this is one of those questions which we're working on, and we don't really have a definitive answer at this point.
Assuming SAIC can reopen for the summer, can studio move out be delayed to the end of the summer for graduating students?
I don't think we know. We just don't know.
Will
I hope we can have a summer and that we actually have that as a challenge. So,
will the semester be extended to accommodate a slower learning environment?
At this moment, we don't have plans to extend the semester, but we're going to be closely monitoring how our faculty and how our students feel about the transition to online, because to ensure that there are appropriate learning outcomes is critical to us.
If we have ideas of how to help structure the new online teaching format, who can we share our ideas with directly?
I think with the CRIT staff, I mean, Todd Chilton is the individual at CRIT who is responsible for the online learning environment. And what we've heard from Dave Ravichandran, our VP, our CIO, is that already faculty are making recommendations and suggestions about how to creatively use the online environment. And Todd and his team are completely open to all those suggestions. So the individuals who are doing the training are those who you should speak to and bounce ideas off of.
And we've heard from several faculty who wanted to extend their expertise to other faculty who may be less comfortable with online environments. I'd encourage you also to make yourselves known to Todd and his team. It would be great if we could pair you with someone who needs a little coaching to get through this online transition.
Is there any plan to pause the low residency students?
No,
No.
there's no plan to pause. One of our most successful and experienced instructors in working online is Greg Bordowitz, and he's been working with his team to ensure that the low residency program continues.
Is there increased mental health support for students who stay or students we've yet to hear from?
Yeah, I think Martin answered that Joe and his team are completely on board and ready to do it remotely and expand their services as needed. Give us a minute. We're just reading the
We've got
questions that are coming
Sure.
in.
We're just reading back through
Okay.
to see if there are any of your questions that we did miss. We want to make sure to answer all of the ones that have been asked so far.
While we're doing that, as we're answering questions, I'm realizing that it's really a quite extraordinary moment, I think, in the history of the school to recognize the strength of the staff and faculty that we have. When I think about, we have an extraordinary student affairs staff, extraordinary CRIT staff, IRFM. It's really been phenomenal to watch everyone working at the level they are. And they didn't just start doing this, they do this all the time, but they've really gone to a heightened level that's pretty amazing.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I'd also like to salute the faculty. We've asked you to do this incredibly challenging thing on a really tight time frame. And the vast majority of comments we've received is, how can I do it? Not, I don't want to do it, I can't do it, but how can I do it? And it's truly heartwarming. Not a surprise, but heartwarming.
Mhm.
And I see why when I meet with students, they consistently talk about the best experience at school as being the connections they form with you.
We have a few more questions.
Okay.
Are there ways for student affairs staff to contact students other than their SAIC accounts?
I don't believe, I mean, there may be, but I believe the way they do contact them is through their SEIC accounts. Mike is trying to, mobile phones. Oh, sure. That's right. Mobile phones. I'm showing my age.
It has been said that no one at SAIC who tested positive. It's been said that no one at SAIC has been tested positive for COVID-19. Has anyone been tested at all?
There have been a couple of cases where students were tested out of our desire to be cautious, and all of the tests have come back negative. You probably know that only 10% of all the people who are tested nationally come back positive, but we want to err on the side of safety, and as yet nobody has tested positive.
Right.
How much freedom is the school giving teachers in respect to altering the content of their courses?
Great freedom.
We fully appreciate, and we've known from the very beginning, that teaching online was not a matter of taking an existing course and just delivering it in an online format. We are asking faculty to do the challenging thing of reimagine what their course would be online. And we understand that you're going to be creative problem solvers in taking the course online, and it's going to be utterly different. But we're confident that it'll still be a rewarding experience for your students. So don't worry that we'll be holding you to that original syllabi. That's not what we expect.
Will the Writing Center services be available in some kind of remote format?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think that's something we would have to look into.
It certainly seems like something that could be done at a distance, but we should check on it.
Okay, I think we're scrolling through looking for the next appropriate question to ask.
Nothing more, team here? There's a whole group of people here you should know who are doing amazing things to make this happen. Okay, I think we have one more coming, it sounds like.
Yes. Some MFA students are asking questions about tuition-free courses this fall.
We have not made any decisions yet about any kind of refunds in terms of tuition. So it seems like there's nothing
Looks
else.
like there are a few more questions
Okay.
trickling, one
Okay.
or two.
Okay.
One here about the registration schedule. Will it be impacted at all for our students?
Registering for the next semester?
Yes, because we don't know yet about the next semester.
Any other deadlines that we should be aware being impacted by the shift to online learning?
No,
apart from course registration?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, and as Martin already said, we're hoping that the end of the semester, the date of the end of the semester continues to be the date of the end of the semester rather than going into the summer term. So I'm not aware of any other deadlines that we haven't communicated that are going to be impacted that we know of at this moment.
Understanding that all continuing education courses have been suspended for the semester, will the summer ACE courses also be suspended? Is there any plan so far?
Again, we don't know. As you know, the non-credit courses that have been canceled, you may not know. We gave individuals the option of getting a 50% refund or getting a full course credit for next fall, and individuals are making decisions about those courses. But I don't think we have any particular information yet about, again, anything to do with the summer.
No, but also a note that the ECP courses continue to be offered. They're also moving to online and alternative formats.
Are there any changes to or guidance for our approach to the admissions process institution-wide?
Rose and her team have been working valiantly. They stayed out in the field until we almost had to command them to come back home. They are doing an absolutely splendid job being in touch with students. They've figured out ways to be in touch with students in China, which is quite amazing. So at this point, they are functioning, really stepping up communication with all admitted students, encouraging them to come, processing deposits. So again, this is a unfolding situation in which we don't yet know how many students will actually come in the fall, but they are doing everything they possibly can to encourage students and be positive with students about the fall.
Rose last night, I saw her when she was leaving with 5 desktop computers in the back of her car that she was dropping off to her staff so they could be assured of being able to work at home if for some reason it was impossible to come to campus. So they really are doing everything they can to ensure that we'll have as successful a recruiting season as is possible.
This is all, it's for admissions as well as for financial services who are fully available to students and prospective students and admitted students.
Earlier, there was some question about facilities access during this closure. What does it mean to have only computer labs open?
Well, it means that the shops are not open.
We,
That-
we don't want people to be in classrooms or other public spaces. The building is being limited to people getting to their offices to retrieve belongings and to make use of the computer lab so that they can get online.
With the museum closing for several weeks, what is the financial impact on the institution as a whole, if any?
We have, for the last 10 or 15 years, been an incredibly well-run financial institution. So we have the ability to weather some shocks, but it's undoubtedly true that this is a challenging period at the move online, and all the additional support that we're providing to faculty and staff will be a drain on us. But we've been around for more than 150 years, and we have no doubt that we'll weather this storm too.
Have we admitted that in-person instruction is not necessary for studio teaching? At what point do we delay a student's degree?
We hope that we will not delay degrees for any student. As Martin has already said, and a number of faculty that we've spoken to have said, what's going to happen online is going to be very different than what has happened in studios and classrooms, and we know that. But I think we feel fortunately that we got through half of the semester as we anticipated it to be conducted, and the last half will be different. But we're really hoping that all students can complete the semester.
Along with Judith Brotman and many others, we are still concerned about a plan for students without Wi-Fi. Have any measures been taken so far?
Dave, the head of IT, has produced a list of Wi-Fi providers who are offering discounted or low-fee rates. We've also heard that most of the major providers are promising not to cut off anybody in the coming months who doesn't have the ability to pay. So these are resources that we're trying to get out to any of our students who express a need.
Can you clarify faculty access to studio labs for preparing online classes?
I feel as if
Yeah, I feel like perhaps we're not being as clear as we should be. There will be computer labs in McLean where if faculty want to participate in the online training in those computer labs, they are open. And I believe Jefferson has distributed times when faculty, 2-hour chunks that faculty can come to campus for the training. So that will be that will be the only access to facilities other than if faculty who have offices wish to come to their offices.
another thing we can do to help clarify this question that I think's come up a couple of times is on the frequently asked questions page, we'll give you specific room numbers of the rooms that faculty can have access to.
In this shift to online learning, will faculty be able to use technology other than Canvas to support their students?
They can, yes. We're hoping that Canvas and Panopto, what is it called?
Yeah.
will be the technologies that are most useful to them, but they're welcome to use any technology they want. If it's one that they require support from the CRIT team for, it's going to have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, since we're trying to deliver mostly training on Canvas, which is the one that's going to be most useful to the majority of our faculty. But we're absolutely not trying to limit faculty choice. We just have limited CRIT capacity to aid you with other technologies. So it would have to be on a case-by-case basis.
If we are going to require students to have online access, will there be some kind of way to subsidize or pay for students' access costs, and to also allow all students to get access as they need?
We're really waiting to hear if this is a real problem with students. We've heard faculty express that concern, but as far as I know, we haven't actually heard directly from students yet that they're having trouble getting online. But I can assure you that our student affairs team will be working closely with students on the issues of financial insecurity, on food insecurity, and certainly on their ability to get online to complete their coursework.
And students are required to have a laptop, so they should have the basic equipment to be able to do the online classes.
Will students have the ability to sign up for summer internships through CapX?
We don't know. CapX is planning for summer internships. They already have many that that they've worked with employers for, but we don't know what the state of Chicago will be, what the state of the world will be, and as you know, students do internships all over the country and all over the world.
Can we imagine faculty online town hall meetings with Alyssa and Martin in the future that allows for dialogue, perhaps via Zoom?
I don't know if Zoom would work with over 200 people. We would like to have other opportunities to be able to communicate with you, and we're certainly happy to hear suggestions and to work with you at trying to find a better format. This was our first effort to try and get this arranged quickly.
Just another question here. I was told I could no longer pay my visitors to campus. Is that true? And if so, why?
Uh, Anyone who has funds budgeted to pay visitors to work online, I think, is perfectly free to do so. I assume the person isn't talking about a physical visit, which of course is not allowed.
Right.
Can you reiterate or clarify the recommendations to faculty regarding synchronous or asynchronous scheduling of online courses?
Well, because our students are now likely to be all over the world taking our courses, it's certainly preferable that they be asynchronous so that students in China or Japan or Korea can have equal access to the courses as students who are studying in the US. I think it's also going to be easier for the majority of our faculty to deliver education in an asynchronous format. But it's really an accessibility issue, and we hope that that'll be the option that faculty choose.
We're combing here through a couple more of your questions.
Oh, yeah. While you're combing, one question that comes up quite a bit that I'm actually surprised hasn't been asked here is, will we be paying part-time faculty more for their labor in switching to online courses? And the answer is yes. Of course, the 2-week break that we're effectively taking does provide some compensation to faculty to convert to their courses, because they're not engaged actively in teaching now. But we've decided that we're going to pay each part-time faculty member $500 extra per course to help ease the burden of moving to an online environment.
Will this online learning format be used as a model for future teaching opportunities and courses at the school going forward?
It's totally up to faculty, I think.
Yeah, we have no institutional interest in
Right.
moving to an online environment per se. What we do hope is that there are lessons learned through this experiment that allow faculty to enrich the experience of students in classes. I could certainly imagine that some faculty will figure out ways of creating blended courses that enhance the educational experience of students, but nobody is more eager than we are to return to studio-based work.
What is the plan for student course evaluations this spring?
That's one of the things that we've engaged the Senate in. The curriculum committee, which I think many of you know has been working on a new course evaluation, is going to be tasked with trying to come up with an interim one that we can use just this year to try and evaluate the online teaching process. I'd also like to talk to the chair of the FCTRB and establish a guideline for how we will use course evaluations from the spring of 2020 in the evaluation of faculty moving on, because all of us appreciate that this is not a normal semester, and I think we'll need to take the evaluations received from students with a grain of salt. We'll do everything possible to ensure that faculty members are not harmed for their good faith efforts to move courses online.
We understand that searches are paused. When do you anticipate a decision if these will continue to proceed?
We don't know, but we promise to communicate out to departments as soon as we can. Again, it's rather contingent on how the world environment and what happens in Chicago, how that evolves in the coming weeks.
Another accessibility question here. Can you please clarify, is there access to non-computer labs now, today?
No. Correct?
I'm I'm not 100% certain
Okay,
because
okay.
I think we've made allowances for faculty to retrieve things, but
Yes, this is Mike. I believe faculty can retrieve things, but the other labs are not being open for making because the IRFM staff is being deployed to help the transition to online learning.
but the shops you're talking about.
Yes, the shops. Right.
Yes.
I have a question here from the sculpture department. In what ways is this institution considering endemic difficulties for various very physical disciplines migrating content online?
We're well aware that for fiber and sculpture and ceramics and other departments, there are unique challenges in moving online. Alyssa and I met with a group of faculty recently, mostly from the studio-based departments, to talk to them about how they could potentially move online. And we talked to one assistant professor from ceramics who talked about his eagerness to give it a go. And arguably, ceramics is one of the most challenging departments to move to an online environment. But I think there was an appreciation of the fact that for our undergraduates at least, we're talking about half of one semester, 1/16 of the student's total education. That semester will not give students the kind of making skills that they would have received in a standard studio course. But it does allow for an opportunity of getting them to think about making and to think about conceptualizing how the process works, or even about the history of medium that might be an interesting thing to add to their educational experience. As Alyssa and I said at the beginning, it definitely won't be the same, but it could still be a valuable experience for students.
You mentioned earlier that you held a department heads meeting earlier this week. Do you have any plans to hold them next week so that faculty can take their thoughts to chairs for them to work out together with you rather than trying to do it over this format now?
Jefferson has committed to holding additional department head meetings in an online environment. I'm not certain when the next meeting is scheduled for, but Jefferson, Mike Nicolai, and myself attended the last department heads meetings, and there was general agreement that we would try and continue with it. That was a Zoom meeting where we did allow participants to talk, but we had 67 some odd people, and it became a little tangled at times.
Can departments determine single use of their departmental facilities, labs for course preparation?
I don't think I follow that.
I think it means that if a faculty member wants to use a particular facility so that they can use it in their online class, doing some demonstration perhaps or something, I'm guessing that that's what it is.
Yeah, if so, no. We don't have the staff
We don't
on
have
campus
staff.
to keep the shops open.
How will we reconcile the need for faculty to access a finite number of workstations in classrooms for remote teaching, the need to practice social distancing and scheduling issues?
Between the laptops that we're providing to faculty who don't have other laptops and the faculty members who have computers that they have access to, and the labs that exist on campus, we're hoping that we'll have enough to squeak by.
And the staff that are doing any kind of request for in-person training realize that they have to have faculty, they have to observe the social distancing in terms of the training. So they are aware of that.
Is the library still open for faculty?
No.
The library is not open, but I spoke to the director of the library recently, and she's ready and willing to meet faculty requests. If there are particular book chapters or DVDs or materials that you need, she will have her staff make it available to you. So the library as a resource is still there in a slightly constricted fashion, but you won't have physical access to the library.
Will there be an announcement of summer course cancellation before the end of this current spring semester?
If we cancel them, then yes. So, if they go ahead, no.
What happens if students, quote, go off the grid? Do they not get any credit, an NCR?
I don't think we've fully determined that yet. There's differing opinions from the deans, so I don't think we have a definitive answer. There's been some reaction from some faculty and the deans that we've spoken to that said if students are passing now, perhaps they should pass. We really do want to attempt the online learning as much as we can. So I think this is something we're going to deal with as the rest of the semester unfolds.
What's happening with the strategic plan?
I asked Amy Honchel just a day or two ago to send out emails to everybody engaged in strategic planning saying that we were pausing it for now. If there comes a time later in the semester where the crisis seems to be abating, we can potentially talk about moving forward. But as important as the strategic plan is, it's not as important as getting us all online quickly. And I didn't want to take staff and faculty and student attention away from everything that's going on at the moment. So that has been placed on hold for now.
Relating back to student concerns and attendance, what is the procedure for monitoring attendance online?
Dave is working on getting a report to us about how Canvas can be used to take attendance. My understanding is that there are many ways in which you can judge a student's engagement on Canvas, and as soon as we have that information, we'll push it out to faculty.
Do students have the agency to withdraw at this point, or will they receive no credit?
We are encouraging students to go online and complete the semester.
We realize that students have a lot of anxiety about what the educational experience is going to be, but we also have a lot of confidence about faculty's ability to deliver a rich experience, and we'd really like students to give it a try before they decide that this isn't for them. So we have certainly encouraged students to continue.
Can we make some of our terrific resources, VAP, VDB, the Video Data Bank, available to art schools and the art world during this extraordinary atomized time?
Well, Video Data Bank, is my understanding, is you can access it online, correct? Am I wrong about that at this point?
We're much of it, though not
All of it.
We're acquiring and implementing a software that will allow us to be fully online, and we've been very much in touch with our ACAD colleagues to try and strategize with them about how they're dealing with the crisis. And while I don't know that we want to devote resources right now to opening ourselves up to the world, I think it's a wonderful suggestion to see what we can do to help our art school peers, because as the questioner is pointing out, we do have a fantastic wealth of resources here.
Speaking of resources, can faculty check out equipment for extended periods of time?
They can, and that's being considered on a case-by-case basis.
Since summer classes are still on the table, are summer trips also considered viable, or should we stop making arrangements now?
We haven't canceled any summer trips to date, but anyone who's reading the news should probably be concerned about them.
Will Alyssa and Martin please commit before the end of this meeting that all future meetings be accessible?
We will do our absolute best.
Related back to equipment checkout, what about tools and equipment on loan from media centers or shops that we currently have in our possession? Do these items need to be returned by Friday?
It's not something that anyone has pointed out, so I
It,
would informally say it's fine. I think it's possible that in the next week, in the next day, in the next 10 days, we don't know. There could be further restrictions on our movement in the city. There could be further restrictions, and we may have to close buildings. If that was the case, we would hopefully be able to give everyone enough time to retrieve whatever they needed from campus. We're not there, but I think we just have to be prepared.
When will there be a decision about thesis exhibitions and other end of year departmental events?
that's something that we're actively engaged in trying to sort out. We've asked faculty to provide us, faculty involved in the various shows, to provide us feedback about how they can imagine alternative formats, because it's difficult for us to imagine certainly any of the performances or exhibitions that take place in April going on in their traditional ways. But my understanding is that by Friday, we hope to have more information about the shows that are on the schedule for the next 3 weeks.
Canvas and other online learning platforms or tools, who is the specific person to reach out to regarding remote pedagogy?
Well, at this point, we wish, of course, we had already had our Center for Teaching and Learning going, but we do not. So I would say that Todd Chilton, who again is responsible for the online training, is actually very highly skilled in online pedagogy.
And I would hope that if we have some faculty volunteers who are willing to mentor colleagues, if they get in touch with Todd, then Todd will have the ability to partner people up and take some of the burden off of crit staff, which would be great.
How will and when can students collect their art from the BFA show and clear out their studios?
We have a plan in place in which the IRFM staff, basically what we're saying right now is your art will be safe. If you can come and retrieve it, that's great, but we will store it and take care of it. And we will also, if we end up having to, send it back to students. So the IRFM staff and the exhibitions and events staff is working on it, a plan.
Related, we understand that students have been asked to move out of the residence halls. What is the timeline for move out?
We're asking students that can move out of the residence hall to move out by Sunday at 5 p.m. So there's a whole team working on that with the students. But as I said at the outset, if they have extenuating circumstances, which we're being very flexible about, they can stay. Right now, we have about 100 students who have asked to stay, and we will accommodate them.
It's also, I think, worth adding that once the students move out, the rooms will be clean and will engage in social distancing in the dorm rooms. Our ideal is to have no more than one student per room.
Could class budgets be supplemented in case faculty might need to purchase equipment they normally have access to on campus?
I think it would depend on what the equipment was being used for. So I think if it's for a faculty member's own practice, probably the answer is no. But if there might be something that was needed for the online teaching, we could consider that kind of a request.
It would have to be case by case.
Yeah.
All right, that seems to be the end of the questions that have come through our comment section. If you do have further questions, we encourage you to submit them to saicinfo@saic.edu. We will respond to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you all
Thanks very much for joining us.